This is the 77 WABC minicast.
I want to bring in Frank Tarantino. Frank is a newly created regional director for Drug Enforcement Administration. He covers from Maine down to Virginia. He was a special agent in charge of the New York division, which is, the flagship division for DEA also. Talented leader, one of the best leaders I've ever been around. Frank, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, George. Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, there's a couple of areas I wanted to go over. The one area is, it's related to fentanyl battle we have going here. It looks like overdoses down. Is that a fact?
That is a fact, George. We've seen a marked decrease in overdose deaths across the United States. If we look at a 12-month period beginning in 2023, ending in June of 2023, there were 112,323 overdose deaths. And then a year later, ending in August of 2024, there was 84,076. So like a 25% decrease in overdose deaths across the United States. And we're seeing that here in New York City and across the Northeast.
Is that showing us that we're actually making a dent in the fentanyl battle?
Absolutely. We're making significant progress in a number of different fronts, particularly with reducing the supply that's available on our city streets, but also through education, prevention, and awareness. We've been able to get out into the community to government leaders, educators, caregivers, and really express to them the significant threat that fentanyl poses to not just our young people, but to the national security of the United States of America. So it's really a combined effort, and that's why our administrator has launched Fentanyl Free America, which is a global initiative to recommit to protecting the United States from synthetic opioids by disrupting the fentanyl supply chain, really reducing its availability and really saving American lives. That's the number one goal.
Frank Tarantino, this is Jake Novak. I have to ask you, I don't know if the public understands this. This isn't like an episode of Miami Vice anymore where it's a bunch of dealers just trying to score some cash. We have enemies of the United States who are using these drugs as a military weapon against our civilians. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, fentanyl is the most dangerous, most highly addicting synthetic opioid ever created. And it has been weaponized by the cartels specifically to drive their business and to make money. But also it is something that has been used to destabilize the communities in which we live, in which we play, in which we work. And it has had a significant impact on the United States of America, which is positive for places like China, India, and Mexico. They know full well what they're doing, and this is a deliberate, intentional, calculated treachery that they present every single day to the United States of America.
Yeah, it's we're under. It's another way, like Jake said, it's another way to attack us and destabilize the country, and try to show the world that democracy doesn't work. Our enemies are pretty creative when it comes to this stuff. Now, how about the Canadian border? How's the risk with the drugs up there now that it seems like the southern border has been shut down? What's going on up in Canada?
Well, the cartels are very resilient and adapted to change. And so what we see now is we see some increases of methamphetamine and fentanyl moving both north and south across the Canadian border. And our enforcement efforts, along with our counterparts with the Canadian Royal Mounted Police and CBSA, have resulted in significant successes. But it's something that we have to be mindful of, that the cartels are always shifting and evolving. It's like a global hydra, right? You cut off one head and, another seems to, gain some momentum and figure out a way to continue to operate. So we're attacking it from all fronts, attacking the entire illicit supply chain, working with our federal partners, working with our global partners, which is why you see so much progress.
Frank Tarantino, airports are so much on our mind this morning because of this breaking story. First, out of LaGuardia with the crash of the Air Canada jet hitting a Port Authority fire truck and that complete shutdown there. And also because of this other story with ICE agents now being reassigned, some of them to fill in at the TSA checkpoints and to try to get those lines moving again. Obviously, drug trafficking through airports probably not as big as over the water and other areas right now, but still, that's part of this. This isn't just about weapons or people who have too much water in their bag. It's also about maybe drug trafficking through these airports. How much does fentanyl go through airports and things like that, as opposed to just on small boats?
Well, first, yes, thoughts and prayers go out to the lives lost and families of this recent tragedy at the airport. And of course, when we think about how do we attack all these different issues and problems and threats that face the United States, we have to think of it as a whole of government approach, but a whole of government commitment, which is why you see so many different agencies participating in different enforcement activities and or support activities like ICE helping out at the airports to reduce some of the long lines that people are facing. And when we think about drug trafficking, we think about their number one motivator is making money and by all means necessary. And so that means that they are able to move commodities such as illicit drugs in a number of different ways, whether it's through land, sea, or air. They have used aircraft and different airports over the years. And we had a recent investigation where they were using luggage to move large quantities, 30 to 40 kilos, in incremental shipments throughout the week. So maybe 120 kilos might come in a week, but over the course of a month, you're talking about 400 to 600 kilos moving into the United States, moving specifically through JFK. So this is the threat that we face, and this is what is such a challenge for law enforcement, and that is the innovative, creative, no rules manner in which drug traffickers operate.
Frank Tarantino, this is not a stretch, because I want to remind everyone of the other breaking story that, of course, is happening here, is that President Trump announcing that he has had, according to President Trump, productive talks for the last couple of days with the Iranian regime, postponing a planned attack on the Iranian power grid, which has sent oil prices down, stock prices higher, at least for now, in the futures trading. But while we have you here, Frank, we have to talk about the terrorist connection to the drug trade. We know that Hezbollah, which is the number one terrorist proxy army and unit for Iran for so many years, has been running drugs in this country for quite some time. We also know that under Operation Cassandra, President Obama stopped the infiltration of that drug operation of Hezbollah in this country. I'm not expecting you to name every single detail about this, but drug trafficking also funds and fuels terrorism, does it not?
Absolutely. I mean, these drug trafficking organizations, as I said earlier, their number one priority is to make money, and they make a lot of money. In some cases, as high as it's estimated $500 billion a year. They use that money in a number of different ways, and these shadow facilitators that are in the background are the ones that use that money in different ways. And what we have identified is, of the 94 known foreign terrorist organizations, roughly 47, almost 50% of those foreign terrorist organizations are involved in drug trafficking. And that's why President Trump, back in February of 2025, designated 8 new foreign terrorist organizations, 6 of which were very prominent, very successful, very sinister drug trafficking organizations, cartels in Mexico, the most dominant Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations that are, profiting from the illicit drug trade, but also creating terror throughout, the Western Hemisphere. And that's why we have doubled down on our efforts. And that's why you see, again, a whole government approach, a whole government commitment. That's why you see the Department of War and so many other different intelligence agencies contributing to this fight. And this is also why we've seen 2 separate removals of cartel members from Mexico. Back in February of 2025, there were 29 removals. Most notable, Rafael Caro Quintero, who was responsible for killing Enrique Kiki Camarena in 1985. And then, of course, more recently, in January of this year, 37 removals. So 66 total cartel members removed from Mexico to the United States to face prosecution and to sit in U.S. prisons, which is really monumental.